Hi, and welcome back to the Community Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Todd Welsh, and today is episode 3. I can't think of a better man to interview today, Chad Kassem with Acoustic Sounds as a community leader in Salina, Kansas. Today, I want to ask him the question of how did he get to Salina, Kansas, because I've heard a story, but now we're going to get the truth. We're going to talk about some business philosophy he has and a little bit about what it takes to be a community leader in Salina. All right, we're joined here with Chad Kassem, and we're going to get right into the Community Leader Podcast. And first of all, welcome, Chad.
Thank you for having me, Todd.
All right, man. So you and I were chatting just a minute ago. And this Community Leader Podcast was exactly the reason that I started it. I am really telling you that when I was thinking of this, I was like going, who could I get on here that would be the perfect guest? And your name surfaced, like you were the top person in my head that go, if I could hear the Chad Kassem story of how he came to Salina, Kansas. Because the truth is, I'm not originally from Salina, Kansas. You're not from Salina, Kansas.
Where are you from?
I'm from Denver.
Yeah, I thought so, because I knew you were you had ties to Colorado.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So Denver. So I moved here when I was 1989. And when did you move to Salina?
84.
84.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Community Leader Podcast is, I was going to name it the Community Entrepreneur, Community whatever, but I like the Community Leader with entrepreneurial inside here. Now, I even know you enough that we're going to do a little bit of disclaimer that says that, I'm going to run this whole disclaimer probably in front of this that says, look, if you're offended by language, if you take your kids and put them in another room, because I'm telling you, man, today is going to be pretty raw on what you and I talk about, because that's who we are. We'll let the listeners know that you and I do know each other a little bit. We've had some interaction.
No. I mean, hey, man, I like your style, and I know you're a roller. You know what I mean? And you find some nice properties, and you're doing well. And I've sat from afar and watched. I'm impressed, man. You so happy that you got this building too. It's such a nice, cool place.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So anyway, let's cut into it. So here's the story that I've heard of Chad Kassem throughout the years, and I never had the balls to really ask you, what's going on. And so when I moved here, I heard about this guy, who was buying and selling records or whatever, and was doing really well. And I'm like, well, who is it? Well, it's this Chad Kassem guy. And I'm like, so I kept hearing Chad Kassem. And I'm like, well, what do you guys know about him? And they're like, well, he arrived here. Here's the story. He arrived here on a Greyhound bus, and he got off the bus, and he just started walking, and he ended up at La Hacienda, and he walked into La Hacienda, and he asked him if he could get a job, and the guy's like, no, we don't need anybody, and you're like, man, I need a job, and they're like, and the guy finally hired him, and he was washing dishes at La Hacienda. You're going to correct this story in a minute, but this is the story. He was washing dishes at La Hacienda. And then he started collecting records, and he was buying and selling so many records that the FedEx trucks were pulling up on his road, and the neighbors were all getting mad, and he was buying and selling. So he had to buy a building, and then basically he just took off. And then later on, I heard you bought the church, and you were doing the recording studio. And then a lot of people don't even know you were interviewed by 60 Minutes. I think they came down and they talked. Now, this is much later in your life, so we're going to have to backtrack a lot. And then I met you, and you were much younger when I met you many years ago. And I was like, man, this guy is there's something different about you. I don't know what it is, but it's exciting for me to be around you because there's something going on with you that is so different than everybody else. And I don't know that you feel that. I mean, most people probably wouldn't for themselves. I don't know. But anyway, so that's my Chad story. So now let's rewind it all the way back. And I know you're from Louisiana. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we're going to start there. But how did you get to Salina, Kansas? And I'm going to let you tell the story.
Well, actually, the story, I mean, it was exciting for me to hear what you were going to say, to see how different it might have been. And it's different, and I'll tell the story, but it's really pretty close.
Really?
Yeah. It's, the Greyhound bus part, that didn't happen, but hey, that adds a little spice to the story.
Yeah. So did you drive here then?
No. I flew. So if you want me to start there, I went to a halfway house. It was a state-ran halfway house, and it was the Louisiana State. I think it was the Louisiana State Mental Institution, or it was the Louisiana State Hospital, to go to drug treatment. So I did a 30-day program, but when I got out, they wanted me to go to a halfway house. And so Salina had a one called the Pathfinder that was very well known countrywide as being a really good halfway house. And they had a lot of, like a football team will recruit from, like you might have a football team in Louisiana, but you recruit a lot from Arkansas.
Yeah.
And you have like a little pipeline. Well, the Pathfinder had a pipeline to Louisiana because Louisiana has a lot of export business of getting sober. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if you know anything about the culture.
Yeah, we're going to take you from the wettest state and move you to the driest
state.
Right, yeah, okay.
Exactly,
Got it.
Yeah, you don't go from Kansas to Louisiana to get sober.
Get sober,
right, yeah. So they had a good little pipeline going. But anyway, but it's funny that when you asked how I got here, because it reminds me of what happened the day that I left. So I got out of the treatment center and I went home. Well, my dad had it arranged where we were going to catch a flight right away, and I was going to get out of Lafayette, where I'm from, which is the Cajun area of Louisiana. And so he's like, he had it all arranged. He didn't want to mess this up. Straight to the airport. And even back then, this is like 1984, you could see the plane. It was right before we were there on time. But they were like, nope. They were still loading the plane. You can't get on. You'll have to get your next flight. And my dad, he's a really cool dad. But, I swear, he almost jumped over the counter. And because, I was frustrated, too, because they were locking up the plane. They wouldn't let me on.
Right.
And he just wanted me to be on so bad. So they wouldn't let us on. So when we call the halfway house in Salina, that is a big red flag. Like, if you didn't make your flight, chances are you screwed up. You're getting drunk or high. And they wouldn't let us. They're like, no, you can't come now, because we know. And usually they're probably right. But in this case, now, so we go to my house, and my dad says, Chad, listen, man, and there's one thing they teach you in AA is one day at a time. Mm. And I could just see my dad was just so worried. He was so, he was so upset, and he was so worried that, because I have a lot of friends all the way around my house. I mean, if I wanted to join.
You could have drifted right back.
Oh, yeah. Like
out the door and you're done.
Oh, yeah. It could have, in 2 seconds, I could have had any drug I wanted, delivered.
Yeah.
And he knew
this is pre-Amazon. This is this is delivered by Louis, not Amazon, right?
I know. I was thinking that when I was thinking, this is. And so I looked at him. I said, Dad, because I knew if I got high that day, he would blame himself. So I told myself right then, because I remembered hey, one day at a time.
Right.
Dad, I'll promise you this. I will not get high today.
Wow.
And you could just see the stress leave his body, and I didn't, and I thought to myself, hey, maybe I'll get high later, but it's not going to be today because I don't want it to, and so anyway, we convinced him. It wasn't easy to convince him to still let me come. So I come to Salina. So we flew to Salina. I don't know if we flew into Salina. Sometimes I try to remember that. But I think we did actually. But anyway, I flew to Salina. Went to the halfway house. It's on North Street, right by the old Dillons.
Okay.
Right by there's a bridge. It's like a 3-story house, a big white house.
Wow.
On North Street, and so I walk in there, and one of the first people I see is a guy named Brian Gudo, which is a classic Cajun name, and I'm like, this guy grew up a block from my house, and I'm like.
Which, again, is the history of Lafayette or Louisiana sending people to Kansas.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to.
Okay.
But I
don't know if this is going good because now all the people are from Louisiana who are having the problems are now in Salina. So you're still going to be around some of the same people. So this could be a good story. We'll see how it goes.
Well, there was a lot. I've seen a lot of friends come up here, but it didn't affect me in a bad way. I tried to help a lot of people too. But anyway, I looked at Guido, and I mean, Guido was bad when he was hell on wheels. And I'm like, Guido, what you doing here? And he looked at me with this really weird look, and he wouldn't answer me, And I'm like, dude, it's just a way of communicating. I mean, because what I finally figured out when he kept looking at me like that is like, well, what do you think I'm doing here? What are you doing here? Like you know. So it's just a saying we have in Louisiana. But anyway, so I got here, and they told me to go to CKF, and they had a counselor here. We have a counselor. You got to go meet with this guy. I think his name was Mike. I can't remember, but he was a nice guy. And their office, CKF's office, if you can imagine this, was that bar Throwbacks on North Street.
Man, you're going way back on there.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
that little brick building. It's a bar.
Yep.
Okay, that was their office. So I had to walk from North Street to there, snow on the ground this high. I mean, I'm from, we're only a few miles from the Gulf in Louisiana. Snow this high. They made me walk. I'm like, where is somebody can give me a ride? No, you got to walk. So I walk over there, and I'm telling you the long story, but so I walk over there. The guy starts asking me questions. First question he asks is, how you feeling? And I said, well, I'm pissed off. And he says, well, that's a good start. I'm glad to hear that, because at least I know you're honest. So that was the first day. Well, a couple of days later, I went to the job service, the employment agency. Right. So there was this guy named Ludi Lumpkins. Did you know Ludi?
No.
Character. A lot of people in town know Ludi. And so I sit down. I said, listen, I'm looking for a job. He says, you looking for a job, boy? I says, yeah, I'm looking for a job. He said, where you from? I said, from Louisiana. He said, we ain't got no jobs here. You might as well go back home.
How old are you at this time? How old are you when
22.
You got here? 22. Okay.
22. And I just couldn't believe it, because I could believe that there was no jobs. I believed that part. But I couldn't believe that he didn't encourage me, like, well, hey, but if you really, really look, you'll find one.
Right.
But he said, where you from, boy? I said, Louisiana. You might as well go back home. There ain't no jobs here. The reason I believe that there might not be any jobs here is I went to Halfway House in Sioux City, Iowa, and there really wasn't no jobs there. I mean, you talk about this place was desperate, man. I mean, it was a rough city. I mean, you didn't see Cadillacs. You didn't see nothing. People were really struggling there. And you'd go to Burger King, and they'd have a stack. They'd say, do you really want to fill out an application?
Because that's how many we got.
Yeah, and they'd open a drawer, and it'd be like a cartoon where they pop up, So I believed him. But anyway, I left from there, right, which is not far from the police station, walked down Walnut, I guess, to Broadway, walked to La Hacienda, so you was right.
Wow.
I walked in, and there was a lady behind the counter. I said, I'd like a job. Son, we don't have no jobs. But really, I really would like a job. I really need a job, and I'd like a job. Sir, I just told you we don't have any jobs. And I kept talking to her and kept telling her I need a job. And there was this lady that was sitting, she was adding up the checks, to see, their lunch, how much they made at lunch or whatever. And she was over there adding up. And she just kept looking up. And finally she came. She goes, well, I'm the owner, and we really don't need anybody. But anybody that wants a job as bad as you, I'm going to hire, because I feel like you're going to be a good employee. And I'm like, wow. And so I went.
And that is part of the story I heard. That is true. Like La Hacienda. And I heard that you stood at the counter and you were like, I need a job. And they're like, we're not hiring anybody. And you're like, no, you don't understand. I'll do anything. Like I really need a job. And they hired you.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
that is the story that is planted in my head of going, man, the guy's got some tenacity. I don't know who he is when I first heard about it. When I heard that story, I was like, that guy's got some tenacity.
Well, it's what happened. I mean, I can see it in my mind right now, and I always remember Eldine Diaz was her name, and when she died, I don't know how I found out about it. I know her daughter's really nice, and somehow I found out about it, and they had, I think it was at the Watson Room, somewhere they had a little eulogy or
right.
we talked. I said, hey, I want to say something.
Yeah.
And they let me talk, and I told the story, and then they were like, wow, that's really who our mother was, and it was real touching. So, it was real important. I mean, that was a real. It may sound like not much, but it was really something.
Man, that's the start, though. So you think about it, that's the start of you being who you are in Salina, Kansas. And again, I want to preface again. I've had 2 other podcasts. So you're my first community leader podcast. But each time I talked about community leaders, Amanda from Big Brothers and Big Sisters, she goes, well, I just can't really believe I'm on the show. And I said, well, tell me more about that. And she goes, well, I don't view myself as a community leader. She goes, I don't view myself as a Chad Kassem. And your name surfaced inside that.
Whoa.
And I think that's what's
that's
and that, I mean, it
really,
is though. Like
what?
that's
I
got to
mean,
be one of those things that's here.
Well, the thing is I was kind of a bad boy for so long, that to think.
But that's
that
why you're
would
here,
say,
though, man.
You know what I mean? To think that somebody would say that is.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm a little rough around. Well, that's a huge compliment to hear.
So let's go back. Let's keep it on track from here. So La Hacienda, how long did you work there?
Maybe 3 or 4 months, something like that. I mean, it seemed like a long time probably, but when you look back, to finish that, when I went back to the halfway house and I told them they had a job, man, there was a lot of people that wasn't happy about that because they had like 30 guys in the house and 28 of them didn't have jobs. And you
had just gotten there.
Yeah, I just got
a job.
Yeah, they were. Like, it made them look bad. It made them look bad,
What was the guy's name? The guy Guido. What did you tell me his name was? The Louisiana dude.
Oh, Brian Guido.
Guido. So now you've been here 2 days. Guido probably doesn't have a job. You walk back, you got a job.
Yeah. So I got the job, and then I got a job at Russell's. So that's where I worked the longest.
Okay, Russell. So Russell's Restaurant, which is still going today.
Russell's Restaurant, yeah. And I mean, listen, I got stories from Russell's, man.
So what did you do at Russell's? Were you a cook?
I was a cook. See, that's the other part. I wasn't a dishwasher. And then I was one step above. I was a cook at La Hacienda.
So my story is somewhat true. So Greyhound bus is out, and dishwasher is out.
And you said it was a man.
But the man, it was a woman.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it was, hey, you got the main part. This is why I'm
doing it, man. Like this, I want to get the story.
Yeah, it was you had the main part of it, right? Yeah. You got the feel of it, right? This guy came here with nothing, and so Russell's was great, man. We had so much fun there. It was 24 hours. Russell's used to be packed all the time. I mean, there would be buses. Sometimes at night, like on a Monday night, I might be the only cook on the night shift. There'd be like 2 or 3 buses on the way to Colorado. Stop. And you had to cook for all of them. And they only had an hour break.
Right.
Oh, but man, there was just some stories. Some I can't repeat at Russell's. We had some fun, man. And that's the thing, some people that worked with me there, they look at those days as bad, or, it was a bad job or this or that. And I don't look at it like that at all. Like it was fun. It's what we needed at the time.
Yeah.
And so I worked there for a couple of years, and then I worked at Holiday Mansion for a really short time because it's fiberglass.
Oh, they do the bike quest, right? They used to make boats.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's not easy.
Who would think in the middle of Kansas these guys used to make fiberglass like yachts? When I moved to town, I drove out there and I looked at that facility. I'm like, okay, you got to have some vision to be in the middle of Kansas and be building boats that go on the ocean. I mean, that was what. So you worked there for a little bit, okay?
Oh, that was
where
tough.
else did you? So tell me a little bit where else you worked.
I worked at Phillips Lighting.
Okay.
So I worked there for a year, and while I was there, you just really watch light bulbs roll. So it's kind of a thoughtless job, if that's, and you just watch the light bulbs roll. And I work for Manpower, and all they hire there is the relatives. So it's the nepotism at this huge company is just unbelievable. And I mean, and it bothered me because you were doing the work side by side with the other person that was making maybe twice, maybe a little bit more. And I worked there a year and a half. I was never late. I got a story about that because at job service, when they were going to finally do a hiring, you had to be there at Monday morning at job service, same place.
Manpower, is that right?
Yeah.
Was that called
well,
Manpower?
I was working for Manpower.
Okay.
But whoever wanted to try to get a job at Phillips had to go to the job service, and on Monday morning they were going to see you. Well, people started camping out when it closed on Friday because it was a good job.
Because in Salina back then, if you wanted to make some really good money, Phillips Lighting was the place.
It was.
I mean, that's where you wanted to go.
And people started camping out on Friday, and I don't think Friday was that cold, but they had like a blizzard during the middle of the weekend. So somebody in Salina was thoughtful enough to realize. We're talking very, very cold,
right?
Very windy, frostbite type conditions. So they opened up that Memorial Hall or whatever that hall is right across the street,
right?
And they let us go in there. They gave us each a number. So we stayed there all weekend, and you could just tell it was all a game, like they just had to do that. All they hired was relatives and
So are we up to about 1990 at this point? 89, 90, you think? I mean, I'm trying to follow
this is probably this was probably 87.
Okay.
Now it did bother me about the nepotism and the hiring the relatives, but the way I got over that, and I still think about it sometimes, is because it's not right, and it bothered me because I really wanted a job there. But the way I look at it is, if I was a supervisor there and I had worked my whole life there and my son needed a job, who's going to get the job? As soon as it hit my brain that way, I quit.
Right.
It didn't upset me anymore. You know what I mean? Because
and let's think about this. Not that I want to come back to this story, but how many people do you employ now?
About 160.
160 people. Do you think about that when you're employing people now? I mean, how do you hire people in the community now? Is it based off job skills, talent first, or is, hey, my buddy knows somebody who knows somebody, or my brother wants to come to work here? What I'm trying to figure out is the learning lessons that you have from that's now bringing up. I want to bring it into because you went from arriving on a plane, going to a halfway house, to a multi-millionaire now running a very successful company.
Well, if having millions of records is a million, if being rich is having a lot of records, I'm rich.
Then you're rich.
But the money's all in the
inventory.
In the inventory,
yeah. That's all right. We're going to get to that a little bit.
But, you asked me, how do I hire people?
Yeah.
Well, we check, see if they have a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Because
yeah, tough to find people right now in Salina.
If they ask for a job, then the tough thing is a lot of people, and it doesn't seem as bad now, they would just, they would come and you'd hire them, and then they wouldn't show up.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you'd hire this person, and 9 out of 10 wouldn't show up on the day to work. You know,
Right.
it was it's kind of been a crazy time. I mean, I hope all those lessons are in my mind, and I try to treat people the way I want to be treated, or learn from some of the things that happened to me that might not have been totally fair. But actually, I mean, I let my HR person do a lot of it, you know what I mean? And we're not that, I mean, most of the time, if somebody wants a job, we can hire them. It's just, what do we have them do, you know, meaning like almost anybody can come to apply for a job, and we can find at least something for them to do. You know, they might not be a manager, or they might not be an HR person or a bookkeeper or an accountant, but
you got a place for them.
But we have a place for them, and so we got some good people, man. We got some real good people. You know, a lot of times there'll be one person that's just giving you a hard time, and you'll get depressed and feel like everybody's unhappy, or, you know, this is, and you got to remember, you know, you got 159 people really kicking ass for you, and this one person's just kind of being a pain right now. Don't focus on that, you know, try to remember about the good guys. And again, even the person that's giving you a little rough time it might be a good employee. They just unhappy about something, or they just dramatic type person, you know. So, I mean, hopefully I remember some of the things I went through and try to treat people and learn from my experiences. But we're pretty, if they apply for a job, you know, there's a good chance they, you know what I'm saying?
All right, so let's go back to community in there. So X-Side, because eventually I'm going to get to what you do. And I'm trying to figure out how that translation happened of, and again, I did my work on you a little bit, where I went back and I listened to some podcasts, and you've been interviewed by some really great people. And I listened to that story. And so I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because I want to set up some stuff so that we can take out about 3 or 4 years on there. But from a previous podcast I listened to, you basically always kind of collected records back in Louisiana when you were there.
Yeah.
And then at some point when you got here, you brought your collection here.
Wow.
And then you met with a guy, and tell me the story, because I heard it on a podcast. But where I'm really trying to get to is how you learned the difference between the audio file or this certain record that you heard, and the guy put you in there and said, Chad, just number one, shut up for 5 minutes. Just be quiet, which we know, and I know you well, it's tough to do a little bit. Okay. And he sat down and he made you listen. Because for those who are listening right now, you have one of the world's largest, and I don't even know what I'm going to say here, audio file. One of the world's largest audio file, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to set this whole thing up of you started collecting records, buying and selling them, but the light bulb went off for you when the guy told you about a particular record, and then you started looking for him. So tell me that story.
Okay, well, so you were still talking about North American Phillips. So when I was working there and at Russell's, I was collecting records. Okay. You know what I mean? Like just buying and selling them. Basically, I mean, you know, when you know, and you can edit this out, but I mean, basically, and you probably will, but in Louisiana, you know, to supply your drug habit, you know, you buy and sell. Yeah. You buy a pound of reefer and you break it down, and you know what I'm saying?
I'm leaving this in. There's no way we're cutting this out. No way.
And you break it down, and, you know, you sell bags, and that way you have a little stash. And so, you know, I wanted more records. So how do you get more records? You buy, sell, and trade. You know, you buy a couple of records, and you keep a few, you sell a few, you buy a few, you know, you keep a few, you trade a few. And so I was doing that while I was working at Russell's, and while I was working at Phillips. I'd sell them to the waitresses and stuff. So anyway, one time I went back home to Lafayette, and all of my friends, I mean, the culture in Louisiana, there's a couple of things that are real strong. People like to have a good time. They like to have parties. They like to have crawfish boils, and they like music, and they like food. Now, I mean, everywhere likes food, and everywhere likes music, but nowhere more than there, okay? You know what I'm saying? Nowhere is more than there.
Yeah.
So, and that's why they produce so many drug addicts and alcoholics. So, I mean, there's a downside. So I go back home, and I call up a friend, and he brings me over to his house, and he shows me his album collection, and I'm like, wow, those are nice. He says, well, there's this particular one brand that really makes some really great albums, you know. And I'm like, you know, I've seen some of those albums. In fact, I own a couple of those albums, and I don't really hear the difference. To me, you know, they sound the same to me. You know, they cost twice as much, but I don't really hear the difference. He says, well, you know, your expectations are too high. So, you know, sit right here. I'm going to play it for you, and this is how you listen. So listen for these different things. And while I play it, and of course I kept wanting to talk, and hey, Chad, shut up. You know, you're never going to hear anything while you have your mouth running. You know, just sit in the middle. Well, why you want me to sit here? Because the sound stage is better. You're in the middle of the speakers. And then he said, you know, Chad, just for one song, please. And I did exactly what he said. I said, you know, I can give this guy one song. And I heard it. You know, I heard what he was talking about. And, I mean, the light bulb went off, you know, and I just was like, wow, I want more of these records. So I got back to Salina. First thing I did was went to House of Sight and Sound. And they had like 300 of them. I mean, they had a ass load. And, you know, which is a little bit more than a buttload, okay? And so I couldn't believe it. I was like, so I called the guy, you know, I'm like, Chet. And his name was Chet Nixon. He was a childhood friend. And I said, Chet, you wouldn't believe it. Because a lot of all these records are out of print already. You can't, they're already going for $50 or $100 back then.
You found the mother load, didn't you?
Yeah.
Down at House of Sight and Sound.
The House of Sight
They didn't even know what they had.
Yeah, well, you see, they were buying those records because they were twice as expensive as a regular record. Nobody was buying them. Now, if it had been in New York City, they'd have been gone.
Right.
But nobody was coming to Salina looking for those. And, man, I just started flipping through. I said, man, they got Deja Vu. What? You know, and then I was very generous with Chet, so I let him pick everything he wanted. You know what I mean? Like, but he was taking the best.
Right.
Paying, you know, and it was great. And Tom, it was a great record store we had in Salina. The House of Sight and Sound, Tom Headley, nice guy.
So you would buy those records from them, and then you would sell them?
Resell them.
Trade them, resell them, do whatever?
Buy, sell, and trade.
Yeah. And where did you find your market then? So if you went down and let's say you bought 100 records from the House of Sight and Sound, and so really I'm thinking about this, you're almost like a high-end baseball collector card at that time. You know what I mean? Most people collect baseball cards. You were collecting records and then selling them.
I did that at one time too, so, you know, that might be at a better, you know. But, it's just, but to me, the way I describe collecting baseball cards versus records is records, you have the cover that you can look at, plus it sings to you.
Yeah.
It can make you cry. I had some of the rarest baseball cards ever, and I mean, they
never cried.
Yeah.
The only time you cried is like when you put them between your spokes of your bike, and then you realize that they were worth $1,000, and now they're worth 50 cents because you have a crease in them.
Well, I've got a baseball card story that's somewhat similar, but we did that with the spokes too. But no, what I did is I put a little ad in the back of Audio Magazine in 1986, just a little bitty classified ad. Call this number in Salina, Kansas. I have this type of record. And I started getting money orders from all over the world.
So let's think about this. You're still working out at Phillips Lighting.
Yeah,
and your side hustle is going down and finding this particular type of record that's out of production, taking it and putting it into a small ad and then selling that.
Well, I put the small ad, if you're interested in these kind of records, call me, and then I'd make like a Xerox copy catalog. I'd go down to the Dillons, that small Dillons, with a bag full of nickels and make Xerox copy of these catalogs that we would type out on a typewriter, and then and we'd break the machine. I mean, we used it so much, like
Wow.
they'd have to call the serviceman, to come and fix the copier, because we would just run that thing to death, and so.
See, these are the stories I love, because people see the end product right now.
Mm-hmm.
They see your success, 160 employees, millions of dollars of albums, and we can't even get into everything you're doing. The printing, the artwork you do, the business you just bought in town, Consolidated Printing.
Right,
that's what they see now.
Well, no, I know, but I mean, think about it. We were using a Xerox machine at Dillon's.
Yeah.
And now we own.
Now you own the whole Xerox company.
Right.
That used to provide that and work on it.
Right. We own the printing company that.
Yeah.
And I remember going to Consolidated, and this is the way some people. Nobody ever wants to hear no for an answer, right? And so when I would go to these companies to try to do business with, and I went to Consolidated to have them make my catalog, and they're like, "Where are you from, boy? Where you work and all this," and then what they do, instead of telling you no, they jack the price up. Like, "Oh, you want a catalog? That catalog, they're going to be $5 a piece."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not that much money. They just don't want to do business with you because they don't know who you are.
Right.
I mean, I've got a story. I went to Warder Buick to buy a car, and the guy's like, and I won't mention his name, but he's like, "Where you from, boy?" I'm from Louisiana. "Where you work, son?" "Well, I work for myself." He said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "Well, I'd like to test drive that car. I want to buy that car." He goes, "Oh, you do, huh?" I said, "Yeah." "You sure you can afford that car, boy?" "I think I can, yeah, I can." And he kept asking me questions. I said, "Well, it sounds like you want to call my banker? I mean, call, I think it's Mike Flores."
Yeah.
So I heard him go, "Oh, okay." So I told my friend Jerry Gutierrez about it, how I was treated, and Jerry knew the owner. Jerry called the owner, told him the story. So that salesman called me every day for a week, apologizing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And trying to, so.
There's a book out there called The Millionaire Next Door. Some of the guys with the most money are not the guys with the Rolex watches and all the fancy stuff,
Well, especially around in Kansas.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of conservative, and it's one of the things I'm proud of and I like about Salina is there's a lot of really wealthy families and people here that are very humble and very nice and very, they do a lot of charity work and yeah, they're not show offs.
Yeah.
And they remember your name and they remember your children's name. I mean, it's I can compare Kansas and Louisiana, and I do all the time, but there's a lot of things here that are great, and one of the things is how the conservative people here are,
and the people who have the influence to do stuff to make our community better are the ones who are stepping forward and giving the money. You know what I mean? And I won't go in there because I don't want to leave out any names, but I can think of the top 5 people in there that continually, when you show up at different places, you see their family names.
Yeah, of course.
Always giving huge amounts of money, whether it's to children, the community, whatever it is inside there. So one thing I love about Salina too is that the people are willing to give back. Salina's been good to me. Salina's been great to you.
I mean, I owe everything to Salina, really. Well, I mean, the reason I owe a lot to Salina is it was a good community as far as there's not a lot of temptations, and it was a good, clean place to be for me. That's really what I owe Salina for is that it gave me a place that it's a lot of good, honest people here.
Yeah.
You know, and
it gave you the environment that you needed.
Yeah, I needed that environment.
You needed that environment to get clear on it.
Yeah, I needed to get clear.
Because I think the drive is probably always there, being around you, the drive. And I know with your wife, Lydia, and all the real estate stuff she does. And I mean, you guys are just true entrepreneurial people. And I want to go back a little bit to that because, again, as I was doing the research on you and watching a podcast, I thought it was so brilliant because there's two stories I'm going to bring up. Number one is not only would you get the records and you put the ad in there, but they got to choose 10 records for $100.
Yeah.
So you set up this whole marketing genius thing.
Yeah, I don't know how it was.
See, I've done my research on you.
Yeah, I'm impressed. Yeah. So, yeah, that was, I mean, it might seem simple, and it was simple, and it came to me simply. But looking back on it, it was a good way to market it, and we don't do much of it anymore. But it was for those particular records and that particular deal. Oh, I got a good story. You reminded me about that. But it was pick 10 records for $100, postage included. How much cleaner could that be?
Yeah,
$100, 10 records. Postage included, and you didn't have to charge tax back then. So it was $100 postage.
But what I like about it is when you got short on particular records.
Oh.
Okay? So they were picking 10. But if Pink Floyd, like if you only got down to like 6 or 7 Pink Floyds of this particular record, that was worth 2 picks.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'd come up with that.
It's genius, man. It's that's the stuff. When I heard that, I'm like, man, that's the stuff I want to be around. Like, that's what my kids don't understand. Like, that's the type of person that goes, you know what, to start here and have a mind to do that. Because most people just like, oh, we're out of that record. But so when I heard that, I'm like, I want to be around this guy even more, Now let's go all the way back to the story then on how you found this massive, as you call it, ass load full of records, because you eventually ran out of the records down at House of Sight and Sound.
Yeah.
So the story, tell me the Kmart story and the guy who would come in Tuesday at 2:00.
Well, I'll just say this first. You mentioned Lydia in the real estate. I mean, that is all her. I have nothing. Like, there's none of my money.
So next I'm going to bring Lydia on then. I'm going to have Lydia come on because she's a real estate mogul. I mean, I heard about her too from and a side note, I kept hearing about this Lydia cat. Well, Chad, but Lydia, she was, you got to get a hold of her because she's buying and flipping and selling and doing, and I've been in the real estate gig for 28 years. And I kept hearing about Lydia. And then I finally, which I'm not even going to tell you that story because when Lydia's on here, I'm going to tell her the Lydia real estate story I heard about when I first met her because she's tough. She's tough, and like I just couldn't break the ice with Lydia. And she's like, I'm only doing this, and I'm like, oh, well, that's anyway, for another time. But,
right. No,
but Lydia is
right,
sharp.
but I never gave her the idea. I never gave her any money, and I have done, you know what I mean? I might have stopped and picked up a rent check once or twice, you know what I mean?
Right.
But besides that,
she runs her business, you run yours.
I run mine, yeah. And I it just needs to be known because I think a lot of people would assume that I have a lot to do with it, and I have like zero to do with it. In fact, I know a little bit about the business by listening to her, and I think I could do it a little better now that I see. I mean, if I was to get into that business, it's interesting. But anyway, okay. So I found all them records at Sight and Sound. Of course, that wasn't going to last long, and I shared a lot of them with Chet. Because he was the one that told me about them, and he was the one educating me on this one's worth more than that, and this one's worth more than that one, and this is what you ought to ask for that one. But what I would do is, like, if my father came to Kansas to visit me, we might go to Kansas City. So I'd be like that. I'd drag him to every music store in the whole town. And he didn't like it. But if we went to Wichita, to Kansas City, to New Orleans, to Houston, to New York, every time I hit these cities, I would go searching for these records. And I'd buy triplicates, duplicates of all these records. And, my dad would be like, it irritated him a bit because he didn't have much time to spend with me. But that's what I would do. Well, one day they had, there's a thing in the record vinyl business called cutout. And cutouts are overstocked. And the way if you ever seen a record that has a cut corner or a hole punched in it, that's called a cutout. And that's the way that the record company identifies records they sold at a discount, because you can return overstocks back then to get your money back. Well, if they sold a $6 record for 50 cents, they didn't want you to take that record and trade it back in.
Sure.
So the way they do it is they'd mark it. So all stores had a cutout bin, and the records were real cheap. So Kmart had a cutout bin, and it was a big one. And so going through that cutout bin, I saw some of those brands that I like in that cutout bin in Salina, in Kmart for $2. Okay, records I could sell for $30, $40 each. So I found the record, and I went up to the counter, and I asked the lady, I says, hey, where do you get these records? And they, well, we don't know. And I went the next day, asked somebody else, where'd you get these records? Oh, we don't know. Hey, the key
and Chad doesn't take no for an answer. We don't know is not the right answer to tell you.
That's the key to success right there. Or when to take no.
Yeah.
There's always a way. You just ain't figured it out yet.
Right.
There's always a way. You just ain't figured it out yet. You can go below. If there's a fence there, you can dig a hole under it. You can crawl over it. You can cut a hole through it. There's a way. You just ain't figured it out yet. So I kept going. Finally, this man comes to the counter, and he says, okay, we have nothing to do with that. It's called a rack jobber. You know what a rack jobber is?
No.
Well, it's like if you own a store and I have a product for sale, and I'm like, you know what? You don't even have to buy it. Just give me that corner. I will stock this bin or booth with records, and as they sell,
you get a cut, I get a cut.
I'll restock. You don't have to stock it. I'll come in once a week.
Okay.
Refill the stock, and we'll work out what I owe you. So they go, we have a job racker. I think I'm saying it right. Anyway. So he comes every week on Tuesday at noon. So I went there. Guy walks in. He starts doing his job. I said, hey, man, where are you getting those records? And he's like, well, hey, that's where that's kind of what we do. Why would we go? I said, man, really, there's these particular records. I said, well, you don't have to give me your source, but any of these records that you have, this brand, I'll buy them all. Just bring them, I'll buy them all. He says, well, all right, man. And persistence is another key to success. I called a place. He gave me the phone number. It's called the Great A&P. And I think it was Atlantic and Pacific is it was in St. Louis. So I call. This is back in the day where you had to, call. And so a lady answers the phone, the secretary.
You didn't send a text or, we didn't. It was,
I was called, and the lady's like, I tried to explain to her what I was looking for, and she's like, well, we sell records, but I don't know what you mean. And so we talked for like 30 minutes, and she wasn't getting anywhere. And finally, I guess the owner, which happened to be a man, must have heard us going round and round, and he grabbed the phone from me. He says, hello. I'm like, yeah. He goes, what is it you want? I said, I explained what I want. He goes, oh, we got those. We got plenty of those. I'm going to send you a catalog. A couple days, you'll get a catalog. I get this catalog, and it's the mother load. I mean, it's like, I don't know, what example to give you. It'd be like you're into Mustangs, and you find
every Mustang part that he's got forever. Yeah.
Yeah, there was
and 100 of each one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you went and they had the Bicentennial Center full of Mustangs.
Right.
And they were like, we just need the space here, you know. Just take it out. I mean, it was like I just couldn't believe, and cheap.
Yeah.
And over 100.
Well, you know, there's somewhere that guy's telling a story going, we found this knucklehead who called me on the phone and he bought every record we had. And, you know, so it's kind of funny. It's like what they want to get rid of, you need. And then what you need, you finally found somebody who had everything you wanted.
Well, they had a lot of them, man. And I, you know, St. Louis is only 6.5 hours from here. I can't believe I never did just go down there and meet him and see the inventory.
So you never went, you never saw it?
Just,
no.
You know,
they just had the catalog and you would order.
And they would ship it.
And they would ship it to you. So that was your source.
Mm-hmm.
So that might be like the warehouse, but you didn't really have to have the warehouse. And then you were still running the ad. And so when the people
I would buy it. You know, I wouldn't wait. I was stock. You know,
okay.
We feel you can't sell what you don't stock. That's how my philosophy. It's hard to sell something that you don't have in stock.
Well, because if somebody said, hey, I want these 10 records for $100, you call your supplier and they say, we don't have any of those anymore.
Right.
So you would buy the records from the St. Louis guys, store them at your, are you at your house at this time or are you at a company?
I was at 213 South 2nd, apartment 3, okay?
So you're running all of this out of your apartment? Right? No, I don't know where that is.
213 South 2nd?
I don't know what that is.
You know where the Kenwood and Kenwood Park?
Yeah.
Walnut, if you go down Walnut right before you hit the bridge,
okay,
you take a right on South 2nd,
right,
and it brings you into the
Kenwood entry part.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
that brick that brick one that's there?
There's a big white house.
Oh, okay.
It used to be red.
Okay.
It's a huge wooden house.
Okay.
And it's like the second one down. $275, bills paid.
Nice.
2.5 bedroom, bills paid. $275.
Yeah. I may have that beat. When I moved here, I lived above Brooks Liquor with one of your employees, which I talked about the other, Damon Scholda.
Yeah.
Him and I lived above Brooks Liquor, and I think I was paying $200 a month.
No kid.
And he was paying $200, so it was $400 a month, all bills paid. And we
nice.
were, I struggled to do that. You know what I mean? I think back at that now and go, wow, that's what it is. So anyway, you found the mother lode of.
So I was dealing out of that apartment until I could not move. Like I had albums in the bathroom, albums in the bedroom. I mean, you couldn't move in the house. And then I bought a ranch style home on Key Avenue. It was $58,000, I remember. I mean, now it's probably $200.
Yeah.
You know,
minimum $220, $230 on Key. Yeah.
And I remember buying that, and then we just fit the basement out for storage. Well, then our neighbors started complaining when the 18-wheelers started bringing pallets. You know what I mean? Like,
hence the story I talked about before, which is what I'd heard, was that you lived in a residential neighborhood and you were selling and buying so many records that the neighbors started complaining.
Oh, we had 10 employees working in my house.
On Key Street.
Yeah, on Key.
That's awesome.
And we were doing $100,000 a month out of a bedroom.
Wow.
And that's back when we got a fax.
Nice. So you got to remember, this is $100,000 back in the 90s. This would be in the early 90s, wouldn't it be? We're up to there? Yeah.
We got a fax. That's, the thermal fax too, not even the paper fax.
Yeah.
So we go back and they called the city on us, and that was between 88 and 91. So again, I got to Salina in 84. I lived in that apartment from 85 to 88, and then I moved in that house from 88 to 91. We rented out of that. So we rented out of my apartment from 86 to 88. Grew out of that. From 88 to 91, we did it in my house on Key. From 91 to 94, we did it on Santa Fe, right across from the Stiefel.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So
let's think about this. You arrive in Salina in 84
84
to a halfway house.
Yeah.
And in 1990, you purchased a home
88
on 88 on Key Street with 10 employees, and you're running $100K out of there a month.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And no loan, nobody ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did.
And you still got the guy at the car company calling you every week, going, "Hey, sorry, I didn't know you're the guy on Key Street cranking out $100,000 a month."
Yeah. So
all right, go ahead.
So so we were there from 88 to 91. Then I don't remember. There was a guy named Mike Peterson who used to be the
city official.
Yeah.
I know that name. Yeah.
And he was strict.
Yeah.
You know, like if you had to get the permits, and they'd come look at the permits.
Yeah.
But somehow he was involved that wanting us to move out of the apartment. I mean, out of the house. So he comes with a big camera. I mean, you remember how big they were back then.
Carrying it on his shoulder. Yeah.
And he knocks on the door, and he's like, "I want to come in and see this." So I call my lawyer, and he goes, "Don't let that guy in there. He doesn't have a right to go in your house, you know. Just tell him." And he told me a few choice words. And then he goes, No, don't tell him that. I mean, because I guess he was thinking who he was talking to.
Yeah.
I might just tell him what he said, you know. So I ended up being friends with Mike Peterson. He's a great guy, you know, but he took his job just say he took his job real serious. And they did me a favor because I thought I was saving money not having to pay rent. But when your inventory is down in the basement and you have to go up and down every time you box an order, so the inventory comes in on the main floor, then you break it down, bring it down to the basement, then you box it in the basement, and you bring it back up.
Yeah.
I don't care what rent you're paying, you're wasting. You might as well pay $1,000 worth of rent and have a convenient, place that's.
So you moved across from the Stiefel. What's there now?
146 South Santa Fe. I think it's Waddell. They painted it white. They really made.
Oh yeah, that's yeah. It's a financial.
Yeah.
It's a financial place now. Yeah.
Yeah. They really made it a nice building. So I've got stories of my landlord from there. He rented the place out from under me. So I should have known when it was a dance studio, right? And so he would bring me in at nighttime into this woman's business, Della's dance studio. And I would be like, "Well, are we supposed to be in here? I mean, does this lady know?" He goes, "Well, I own the building." So yeah, but does she know? Like, you know. Well, it doesn't matter on the building. And I should have realized he rented it out from under her.
Yeah.
So it's just like if you have a girlfriend that cheated on her boyfriend with you, it may happen again, right?
So that's where the story goes. Did you have to end up leaving eventually? Because he rented it out from underneath you.
Yeah.
So where'd you go after that? From Santa Fe to where?
To the corner of College and Elm. Now, but there's a lesson, there's always a lesson in that, and you're in the real estate building. The lesson I learned from that is it's more important for the leasee to have the lease than the leaseor.
Right.
Did I get it right? The owner.
Yep.
It's more important for the person renting to have the lease than it is for the landlord.
Definitely.
But see, I didn't think that. I was like, man, I pay every day on the day, like the day I owe, he's already paid a few days in advance.
It doesn't matter. When he found a better person, you're out.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I've had time to think about it too. So now
but everything happens for a reason.
No,
though.
I know.
Everything does. I mean that's the best thing he probably did was to do that, because then you went on to do what you've done today.
I can tell you 5 stories like that every time it ends up being a lesson learned, and it helped me.
Yeah.
It pushed me. Like the guy coming to have us move out of our house.
Yeah.
Then having us move out of this place. So, but what I realized is that lady, Della, had a dance studio with a dance floor. Well, those are expensive to make, and there's hardly any dance floors in Salina. So the reason that the next dance studio, they knew there was a dance floor in that building.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a lesson learned. But I bought a building on the corner of Elm College and Elm, which I still own. It was $27,000. Now, I mean, it was in bad condition.
Right.
You know, I had to spend a whole nother 27 again, which back then was, now this is 94.
Okay.
So I was downtown on Santa Fe for 3 years. So 94 to 2004, we ran in that building. Then I bought the old Dillons across from Bogey's, and we were there from 2004 to 2010. And then
that was a huge step, wasn't it? Because
Yeah.
I know the building you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was in it one time. I have no idea
18,000.
why I came to see you. I forget what I was doing that time. Maybe it was a real estate deal in there, but I remember going into that. I mean, it's not in very good shape, probably still today. I think.
on
No, the one down there on College.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
No,
so when I remember
we've-
walking in there, and then I went into one building, and then I went into another building, and there were just rows of records in this warehouse-looking thing, and that was the very first time I think I had learned about you there. So then you left there and went to, which
yeah.
was the old Tractor Supply,
Yeah, the
which is
old
now
Tractor.
like the Charities,
Right,
something
the
like
Catholic
that. Catholic
Charities,
Charities.
yeah.
So you were in there.
Right. So we went from 7,000 square feet with the basement. We were able to survive in there for 10 years, 94 to 2004. Then this place was 18,000 square feet. We thought it was too big. We almost didn't buy it because we thought it was too big. So another lesson in real estate or in businesses, you know, if you need square footage, always buy more than you need.
Yeah. I like that thought.
Yeah. Always buy more than you need.
That's right. If you think you need 10,000 by 20,000
Right.
square feet, because
Yep.
you're going to probably outgrow it. Now, again, Bill, but that's a lesson that when you bought the 10,000, like for me in my life, when I'm doing something, I'm like going, man, I wish I would have just doubled on that. But the truth is, it took everything I could do to buy the 10,000. And then the guy who then makes it the 10,000 work go, well, I should have bought 20. The truth is, I barely could afford the 10. I was lucky to have the 10.
No, I get that, but I also try to use that philosophy in everything I buy. Like, if you really want the Lincoln Continental and the Thunderbird is the one under it, don't buy it, the Thunderbird. Just wait.
Yeah.
Just wait, because you're going to end up with that Continental. You know what I mean? And you're going to lose upgrading.
Yeah.
And so I really believe if you buy the best, you only cry once. Buy the best. If you buy the best, you'll only cry once. And
Very well said.
yeah,
But it takes, again, it's
No,
I
I
shouldn't say
get
it's
it.
easy for us to think. It's easy for us to say that now. So I think anybody who's younger needs to probably hear that, because I even heard that when I was, 23, 24, 25, 26. And then when I was totally different place in my life at 35 and 37, that was there. Brian Richardson is a great friend of mine. And Pam and I bought, my wife, we bought some land that we still live at today. We've been there for 27 years. And I had a house completely drawn up. And I was getting ready to build it. I had the bid and everything. And Brian looked at the plan and he said, Todd, it's too small. And I said, God, it's $165,000. I can't afford anymore. He goes, it's too small. Build what you want, because you're going to grow into it. And I went back to the bank and I convinced the bank to loan me $199,000 instead of $165,000. And I built, I'm not necessarily twice the home, but I increased everything. And we still live in that house today, and we love it. Like I've sold real estate in this community for 28 years. I see the most beautiful homes. But that's our home, and that's the location that we want to live in. And my kids have grown up there. It's the only house my son knows. And so, again, I like that point that you're saying on there is think about what you're going to do and then stretch it. And you'll never regret it. And I've never heard it say that you'll only cry once. And I did. I cried when I saw the payment of $199,000. I went, what are we going to do? Like, we cannot afford this. And I look back now and go, had I built the 160, I would have sold it and lived somewhere else. And the truth is, that's our home.
Right. No, I go by that a lot. Plus, like, we only have so many years to live. Why, listen to mediocre sound? Why eat mediocre, just, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of things that, you just said it. You're still in that house.
Yeah.
It's a hassle to upgrade and sell and maybe lose a little and then buy. There would have been a lot of money you would have spent to have gotten. You might have flipped a few houses to get to where you were.
Yeah. So let's think about real quick on where do I want to go from here, because I know everything that I don't know everything that you have going on now. It's crazy what you have going on. But I want to know, because I don't even want to talk about records and the quality and all this other stuff that's there, because I know I could talk to you for hours. But I'm trying to think of bringing it back to where you're at today. How many companies do you own today, or affiliate companies of what you do?
Well, that's a good question, because we almost have like 10 different companies within one company, because they all do something different, but they work together. And like we explain to people, we can do everything from the microphone, from the singing, to the recording, to the mastering, to the plating, to the pressing, to the graphic artwork, to the printing, to the sleeving, and to the selling direct to the consumer. So we can make a record and do everything that it takes to make a record right here in Salina. The only part of that we don't do is make the record jacket. Now, we have a printing press, and we could modify it to make record jackets. We could do that final thing. But
and when you say record jacket, what do you mean? What it goes in?
Yeah, the cover.
Interesting. So you do. So you actually make the record, but you don't. But I mean, I would think the hardest part would be making the record.
It is.
So the easiest part, I think, would be making the jacket. Tell me why that's so different.
Well, listen, we do everything but the jacket. We even own a printing company. We could print the jacket. But it's like I say, is like, I've got to go to bed sometime at night. You know what I mean? We can't, I could do it. It's tempting. But man, it just adds more stress, more stuff, So, but anyway, we do everything but the jacket. And so I'll just go through we have a recording studio, so we can record music. And also we sell reel-to-reel tape. We can duplicate reel-to-reel tape there, and we can record music. We have a mastering facility which actually cuts the record. It takes the record from the tape or the digital source, puts it on a lacquer, cuts it in, and then we have, from that, we have a plating department that actually plates the record. Now, these are all separate businesses. So, I mean, you could have a recording studio as one business.
Right.
You could have a mastering, and most of these are one business. Recording studio is one business. Mastering facility is one business. Plating department is one business. Electroforming. Pressing records is one business. The graphic designs and the printing is another business. So then we also sell pre-owned records, collectible. So that could be a whole different business. We have a recording label that records new music. That's a whole nother business. We have a record label that reissues music. That's a whole nother business. Again, we said we sell the pre-owned records. That's a whole nother business. Oh, then we sell high-end audio, like the guy you got that's going to buy a house from you.
Right.
He sells high-end audio. That could be, And all of these businesses, and I probably forgot a few, you know.
Well, and then you just bought Consolidated Printing.
Right.
So now you have your whole new printing business.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating.
But
Again,
they all go together.
Right.
And, yeah.
Yeah. No, it truly is fascinating what you've created. I mean, I hope that you, like you said, you got to sleep at night, but I really hope that it does not surprise me how many people, when I bring them up here and we talk about community leaders, that are going to say, well, got to have you talk to Chad. And so that's why I'm amazed. Even though it is episode number 3, it really is episode number 1 for the true community leader, entrepreneur. Again, I'm not taking anything away from the last 2 females that we talked about with the Charlie Walker Pitts Challenge and the Big Brothers and Big Sisters. They do great things in the community. But you also do great things in the community. And you've just done amazing stuff. I mean, I just can't think of anybody in our community who has the story that you have. And that's the reason that it's inspiring to me, is because of the story. Because it'd be totally different if you walked in here and said, well, my dad owned a printing press and I just really walked in the building one day and I took over what he did. That is a totally different story than your story. And I don't think anything less than him. I know some of my friends who are in this community, which will be in your seat, whose parents owned the company and then they took it over. But they owned it when it was doing $200 million a year, and they've taken it to $400 million. I also know some people who took over a company at $200 million and now it's bankrupt. You know what I mean? So there is something about that entrepreneurial person who even takes over a family-based business and then takes it to the next level. But again, I'm always intrigued by your story.
No,
zero to where you're at.
I mean, I see a lot of people that, you know, their family owned this business and then they took it over. But I mean, sometimes I like to tell the story. I think when I landed in Salina, if somebody had dreamed up this, what I'm doing now, and they gave me the idea, like I didn't even have the idea because I didn't know what it was I wanted to be when I grew up. Yeah. I mean, even when I was doing the records, I didn't know I didn't have, like, I never sat down and said, man, I love music. I want to do it for a living. This is what I'm going to do. All I was doing was really collecting records from my personal collection. You know what I mean? And so.
And then it evolved into that.
Right. And the only way I could get more records is to buy, sell, and trade. But I believe if somebody had sat me down and said, here's $1 million cash, here's an office and a building, and here's the idea, and they gave me they spelled out the whole idea that I'm doing, I don't think I'd be doing as well as I am now.
No.
Because I'd have probably went out and bought brand new furniture for the building. You know what I mean? I would have hired some high-end people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd have been,
Well, I've heard it, and you're exactly right. I've heard it said this: I would rather have the knowledge of what it took me to create my $1 million business than the $1 million. Mm-hmm. Meaning you just exactly what you said. You hand me $1 million and it's only going to last so long and I'll probably burn through that pretty quick. But it's the knowledge that you and I have gained through our business that will continue to make that. So I have the real estate knowledge, but you could have handed me $1 million and I couldn't do what I've done in the community.
Yeah.
Because every mistake, every transaction, everything that evolved along the way has created the wealth that we have. And for you, it's like how many times what the stuff you have learned to get that done.
Every day, man. Yeah. There's more stuff happening now than ever. I mean, like, but and I also respect people that, like you said, they might have been given they might have been born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they might have been given a really successful business. But if it's still going and they're improving it or making it grow, or even if they just keeping it running at the same, it's not easy. You know, you can give somebody $5 million and look at the lottery winners. I mean, they'll blow through it.
Yeah.
It's not how much you make, it's how you spend it. You know, I don't care how much you make. If you make $1 million and you spend $1.1 million, you're going to have a problem.
Right.
If you make $100,000 and you spend $80,000, you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not how much you make, it's how you spend it. So I don't, I respect people that continue their parents or their family businesses, because it's not easy to keep a business rolling and profitable.
I mean, success right now is if you were given a $5 million company and in 2 years it's still a $5 million company, you won. I mean, with all of the taxes and everything that goes on and just to keep a business afloat today, I mean, and I know it's to improve it, but if you've employed 160 people and you've done this, your family hasn't missed a meal, you're a member of the community, and at the end of the day, your net worth or your value is still $5 million, God bless you. You know, like, it's just tough to continue to make a business work.
Well, another thing that is key to me, and everybody does things differently. Some people know how to borrow money and make money on the bank's money. I don't feel comfortable with that. I want to own. I want to own everything, and I don't want to pay any interest on anything. And I only buy what you can afford. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to borrow for it. I want to own. You know, I don't want to pay interest, and I believe
it's worked for you.
Yeah, that's how it works. That's what works for me. I don't want to owe anybody any money.
Yeah.
You know, and so I like to own everything outright, and that's, again, there's other people that know how to, borrow money from the bank and make money from that.
So the last story that I want to talk about, because it's an intrigue story to me, and again, it's another one of those ones that I've just heard on the street, but Jimi Hendrix, is this even a true story that you're cutting an album or somebody has the rights to something and then they would bring it to you? What's the last project you did in the last 3 to 5 years so how does that work? Somebody owns the right or the catalog of a music and then they bring it to you and you could cut the whole record? Is that ringing a bell for what you did?
Well, I mean, you mentioned Jimi Hendrix. We are the only pressing plant the Hendrix estate uses.
That's the story I've heard, yeah.
So we press all the Hendrix records, and we have a long relationship with them. But even before I started my pressing plant, they believed. I called the guy in charge, and I'm like, listen, I'm going to be opening a pressing plant. He says, well, I'm with you. You know what I mean? He goes, the moment you're ready, call me. I'm bringing all my business to you. I said, well, John, I haven't even made one record, He says, well, I've been knowing you a while. I trust that you'll be quality, knowing everything about what you've done. He says, I'll bring in all my business to you.
Nice.
And then I also license music from them. So that way I go to them, I say, I want to do this particular record. This is going to be the retail. This is how many I'm going to make. How long do I have the rights to it, And then, and so I license things. So, but with the Hendrix family, we press for them and buy the product through their distributor for ourselves and resell it, but we also license from them. So it's a good relationship. Like Universal, which is the largest record company in the world, we press for them, we buy from them, we license from them. So I don't know that there's a lot of companies that buy from them and sell to them.
Right.
And then license from them, but you know what I mean, and make product for them. So we know a lot of the company people because we deal with them on many different levels.
Yeah.
And we work together. So
well, you're probably maybe going to be one of the most fascinating stories that I do. I mean, the podcast is going to go on. I mean, I have tremendous amount of people who I want to interview in our community who have been community leaders, and again, anybody watching this on the YouTube channel that we have, as well as we'll post it up on some reels on Facebook. I'm going to put on there of who would be the next person. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Who would be somebody in the community that you know of who's a community leader that you think that I should interview that would be in your spot that you would love to hear their story? What name comes to mind first?
Well, I keep hearing about this Jason guy. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Ingermanson.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty fascinating what he's done. like you said, you would hear my name. I just started hearing his name. I mean, I've met him, and like he's served me coffee at one of the, when they were just getting started or something.
Yeah.
So he seems, I guess entrepreneurs are what's going to get me, be something that I would like to watch. But I would like to hear his story because it would be fascinating. Yeah, it sounds kind of fascinating.
It is, and he hopefully I can get him on here. Him and I become somewhat pretty good friends. We got a couple of businesses that we are partners in together. And I went to his house the other day, and for about 45 minutes, he told me a story. And and at the end of that, we only got to like 1999. You know what I mean? And we were there for an hour. And the funny thing is, and then we'll get back to that, but I'm going to bring Jason on here. And the truth is, when I was at Remax, right across the street on Iron Street, there was a Burger King. He used to serve me my lunch. And now he owns like 75 Freddy's. He's got a jet. The guy is, I don't even know how many people he employs.
A
jet. Yeah, you got to see it. It's beautiful.
Well,
that's when you know you've made it, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I say. People go, "You rich?" I said, No. And they go, "Well, what's rich?" I don't really know what rich is, but that's what I say. Rich is when you own a jet and you can actually afford it. That is rich.
Because they say it's cheap to buy. Well, you really want to buy the jet because of the tax deduction. It's having the pilot on staff, buying the jet fuel, the maintenance, and just storing the jet. That's where the expense is. It's crazy.
I mean, it's a very nice luxury. I can tell you that. I have a friend that has one, and you can get from Salina to New Orleans is an hour and 40 minutes. So we leave Salina and we eat in po' boys in New Orleans in 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just a mind blowing. It's a time capsule. No, he would be one. Then I would ask him who he might know of. There's a lot of interesting people around here, and there's a lot of people that are very humble, that have things that you would never know around here, that might have a big business, but like us, we really don't sell much here.
Yeah.
Well,
I even think of community leaders as this. It doesn't have to do with money. There are people in the community that I want to talk to of what drives them. They may have $500 in their whole checking account, but the amount that they volunteer or the amount that they give back to the community and the amount that they do whatever. As we were talking with Amanda from Big Brothers Big Sisters, I said, look, it takes a village. Like to make Salina, Kansas what it is today, for you and I to be able to come here and raise our family and enjoy what we do, and it takes all kind. It's not just the people who have millions of dollars or jets flying around. I want to talk to the people who say, look, I've done 22 volunteer things. I did this. I show up here every time. That's what makes the community. It's not the millions of dollars. The show wasn't done just for me to interview the people in town that have made great success. I want to interview the people in here who love the community and make it work.
Well, I mean, I have to say, listen, man, this was a great place to raise a family. My daughter's 16 years old. I mean, you get a good education at the public school here. You know, I mean, I know some successful people in Salina that are very successful, and their children, like at 16, I think they were already able to go to college. They were very, very smart, and they did go, and they were already doctors, their children. But they chose public school. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the public schools here are good. You know, it's a good community, and people do give back, and they also, man, we're so happy the downtown is looking so nice, and
it's amazing.
We really love what Jane does at the Stiefel, and you know, people. I have my friend in Colorado flies in to come to concerts here.
Yeah.
From Denver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And loves it.
Yeah.
And so,
well, the Stiefel's the best place. I mean, I go to the Stiefel and watch concerts, and then I go to the Wichita one, and I'm like, okay, I'm never driving to Wichita to the arena again. It's a totally different experience.
oh yeah,
It's just not even the same. I would rather, but when I go to concerts, I'm either in the first 5 rows or I don't go. Like it's not worth it.
Well,
like
the
I
older
don't even
you
know.
get, the older you get, you know, it's like you want to be able to see and hear.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you might as well, you know, if you're gonna go,
go.
Right.
I'd rather go to one concert a year and be in the first 5 rows than to go to 25 different concerts. Now that's me though. I just want that experience.
But I mean, when I was 18, you know, the Stones played in the Superdome. The Some Girls was the largest indoor event ever in the world, meaning the most people under one roof. And then Tattoo You beat it. There was 95,000 people under one roof.
Wow.
But those days is over.
Yeah.
So that's fun when you're 18, 20, you know what I'm saying? But when you get older, you actually want to hear and see.
Yeah.
And
all right, final question, because we got to wrap this up. And I didn't give any pre-warn on this, and this is going to be interesting for you coming from Louisiana on this. But this is what I ask everybody on the final question. If you were given 24 hours to live and you had to stay in Salina, Kansas, what would be the next 3 meals you would eat and where at? You can't do a fish boil at your house or something like that. I'm talking you got to go to a restaurant here in town. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, your last 3 meals. And this is tough, like, to think about on here. So where would be your breakfast? Even if you don't, you say, hey, Todd, I don't eat breakfast. Okay, but if you did, where would be your breakfast? Where would you eat?
Well, if I was going to eat breakfast, it would be at Russell's because, you know, it was my first job, and it's good. You know, it's like for Russell's is a truck stop, or back in the day it was, but it was like a Michelin star truck stop. Like
if you would have said anything else other than Russell's, I'd have been disappointed. I mean, given the story of that, and it's
I mean, they're pancakes, and I cooked there, and you know, back then you could get 2 eggs, hash browns, and the meat, and either toast or biscuit was $3.60 on that plate.
Yeah,
you know, that's like $10 now. You could get a 3-egg omelet, you know, hash, biscuit, toast, whatever, and for $3.60.
You don't know what my favorite Russell story is, and then we got to move forward, is when my wife and I would go out to the bars, even maybe before we were married, we were just dating, we would always end up back at Russell's. And there was a guy we met, and he had this little story. I'm going to see if you remember what it is. He said, ask the waitress for the 3rd egg free. I don't even know what it was, but we would always get, I mean, we would go in there with a couple of drinks in us or whatever, and it became a routine. We would say, hey, we want 2 eggs scrambled on there, and we'd like the 3rd egg free. And it was like this little thing that they knew that you were a regular at Russell's.
It sounds, I can't remember for sure, but it sounds recognizable. Like
it's kind of something I always remembered about Russell's that's there.
Well, I'll tell you something about Russell's. And Keith Russell's, this is a business kind of thing. When you made the Russell a burger, he didn't say make the meat a half pound. Weigh it, make sure it's a half pound. He said, make sure it's more than a half pound. Now, you might say, well, what's the significance of that? Now, there's a big difference. If you tell an employee, make sure it ain't over a half pound, he's going to make sure it ain't over a half pound.
Right.
And you make sure it's over, just make sure it's a little over. Then it's a big difference, and it's a mindset. And then also when you put the fries on the Russell burger, you know how you knew how many to put? Is when they start falling off the side. That's when you knew you put enough fries.
Put enough on there. Wow.
So,
what do you think for lunch? What do you think for lunch?
Lunch.
If you say back at Russell's again, I'm gonna can't do that.
No. Well, if they still had the Russell burger, I would.
You would, yeah.
Because they also didn't use. They used a very lean, like it's a bull meat. I think that they grind up the steak for the hamburger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't the Rustler Burger. They cook their own bread there, everything. Lunch. I mean, I live in Salina, but my wife's from Malaysia, so I eat in Malaysia every night. So it's like, and I know the questions, and I feel that we do have some special places in Salina that, like, if somebody comes from out of town, I'm gonna throw a curveball here.
Okay.
If somebody comes from out of town, I'll bring them to Hickory Hut because I feel like they're coming from a place that has special food, a little bit more than us probably. So, but they don't have a Hickory Hut, or if they're barbecue. In fact, I've brought barbecue experts to the Hickory Hut, and they've said that it competes with some of the places in Austin and Kansas City.
Nice.
So, the Hickory Hut is a place I'd bring people, which is like that's from out of town. We like Asian food, we like Mamoya, we like the new Koi ramen, we like Damaru, and they're about a tie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's
I'll let you take the easy way out on that, yeah.
Well, no, that would be because it's true. Those three are a real tie. We really wish they had Vietnamese in Salina. We really wish they had Thai. We really wish they had an Indian restaurant in Salina. That's the only thing we're missing right now is those three, and Mediterranean. But God, it's a question your question is something I like to talk about because there is some little oddball things about Salina that, I mean, we like the little Mexican places, like Fresnillo.
Yep.
We like the one on Santa Fe, in fact, even the eggs ranchero for breakfast sometimes is a good choice. Damn, it's such a
I'm going with those three for you.
No, it's okay. I mean, in fact, you could do those for dinner and lunch, lunch and dinner, but I'm
gonna go with those three.
Right,
You're gonna go to Russell's, Hickory Hut, and then
those other three,
and then one of those three. Yeah. I'm gonna stop at all three of them on the way out.
Right. Yeah, we'll do one night, one the next night. My wife is Asian, so I gotta let her go to a place she likes. Since she cooks for me all the time. But no, I like your question. Who's another person that the meals? Another person to interview. I'd like to see who Jason says.
Yep.
His story's got to be fascinating. No, Salina's been good to me. It's helped me. It keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're more of a family man here. You work, you go home, you do the family things, and there's good people here. That Salina, the downtown, is getting nicer and nicer. And around here, man, the one good thing, there's one thing about it, people are honest here, and you don't get taken for a ride here much. You can pull out the phone book and call a lawyer, and they're not going to take you for a ride. You can call, whoever, and a plumber or this or that, and most of the time there's some better than others.
Right.
Some more reasonable than others. I mean, they can't all be Bud Lee.
Right.
You know what I mean? Who comes over and but for the most part, you don't have to really worry about trying to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Another thing about the Kansas culture, they won't ask to borrow anything. They won't ask you to borrow a hammer. You could see a friend in Salina. It could be 0 degrees, and you say, "Hey, man, you need a ride?" They'll be, "No, I'm good."
Yeah.
You're like, "It's 0. Where are you going?" "Well, 2 miles." "Dude, get in." "No, I'm good."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
well, I'm going to tell you, if you ever see me walking down Iron Street and it's 0, dude, don't go, "Oh, I bet Todd won't take a ride." Bullshit. I'm getting in. Okay. I'm going to blow your whole story there because I'm getting in the car. If it's 0.
I know. I mean,
pull over and pick me up. Okay.
I know, but you get my point.
I mean, yeah,
I'm serious.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the one thing bad about Louisiana, the moment nobody has shame. You know, "Hey, can you borrow me 10? You know, can I borrow this? Can I borrow that?"
Right. Yeah.
"Can I borrow your wife?" No, they don't answer that.
All right, Chad, we got to wrap it up.
All right, dude.
Man, it's been unbelievable, the story. Now I've had this whole legend my whole life here of Chad Kassem in the story.
I mean,
and it was pretty close, man. You didn't let me down. I love the story that's there.
It's pretty close, and you know, I've had a lot of help along the way, man. I mean, you know, like I couldn't have done. I mean, look, we all need to remember, I couldn't have done this alone. You know, you were talking about key sayings, you know, and a key saying, like if you were to ask me what's some keys to success, what were some of your keys to success, and it's you hire people smarter than you to do a specific job.
Yep.
And then you just get out the way.
Yep.
You know, and so most of my employees are smarter than me, and you know, I do what I do, and it's basically buy, sell, and trade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, your unique ability is to spot the talent and then put them in the right position to make the whole company flourish. And I think that's what most leaders do. I mean, the same thing for me. I'm not the smartest guy here. Matter of fact, I barely made it through high school.
Yeah, same.
But I can recognize talent, and I can put them in the right places and watch them flourish. And then, like you said, just get out of the way.
Yeah. I mean, same with me. I barely graduated high school, and so you know, people can make it, you know, without an education, but if you have the education, it's gonna make it that much sweeter and that much easier, you know. And if you're smart enough to go through college, and you're able to do it.
Yep.
You know, so I see both sides of the education part. You know, it's not
Chad.
It's not a necessity, but it's.
Chad, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming, buddy.
All right, thank you.
Good luck
man.
to you, and have a great day.